Okay. We start without you now then. So the question is, can we make the digital economy and the digital society more inclusive, open, fair and secure? Today we had some panels and the coordinators of the panels are here, so they will be the first guests I will call to join me on the podium so that they can share with us their experiences, the experiences they had today. So, starting from Marco Gilli, who's Director and the Professor of Electrical Engineer of the Politecnico di Torino. Please take your seat. And he will tell us about the discussions they had on SMEs and digital transformation. And unfortunately, Guido Scorza is not with us, so I'm very glad to call my old friend Luca De Biase to join us. It is such that it's datafication, which sounds like a Rolling Stones song. I can get no datafication, I guess. So third on the list is Roberto Baldoni, and Roberto Baldoni is full professor of distributed systems at the Università degli Studi di Roma La Sapienza. And of course, he's the president of the Italian Committee for Cybersecurity Research. The fourth guy I'm calling on stage is Guido Boella. And Guido Boella was the leader of the panel on the discussion on how to get a beneficial artificial intelligence in digital economy. And the last guy I'm calling on stage, or did I forget somebody, The last guy is a special guest, is Diego Piacentini, who you know very well, I guess is a commissioner for the digital agenda in the Italian Prime Minister's office. So there they are. And these guys have been discussing ideas, but in order to give these important ideas, very important for our future, we need these ideas to have legs. And the legs to these ideas must be given by the ministers. So I will now ask the ministers of the G7 to join us. Ministers? They want us to wait for them because they feel they are very important, but you are more important than them. Mi dicono che non è vero. No. Okay, what shall I say? The ministers are late, and this is typical of ministers to be late, but it is incredible. Oh, there are the ministers. Va bene. Okay. So, ministers, we've been waiting for you. Come on. Sì. Okay, while the ministers are taking their seat, and I remember I want the ministers to give strong legs to the ideas this gentleman has been discussing so far, I will give the floor to the first one of our coordinators today. It is Marco Gilli. Please tell us which were the subjects you discussed and which are the conclusions and the suggestions you have for the ministers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Minister, it's really a pleasure to be here. My name is Marco Gilli. I'm a currently serving as the rector of the Technical University of Torino, and my role today is just to provide a brief summary of the main outcomes of the first session of this multi-stakeholder conference, which was devoted to SMEs and digital transformation. So you know the starting point. The starting point is that the industrial production revolution is driven by the emergence of disruptive technologies that are essentially based on the fact that we have an enormous quantity of data to be analyzed, data that are generated by billions of connected objects. And the fundamental challenge for government, for public institutions, including universities, of course, is how can this technological revolution contribute to be fair, inclusive, to give rise to a sustainable and social and economic development. So I would summarize by emphasizing three main points of the discussion, and I would like to thank the moderator, the keynote speaker, and the panelists for very, very fruitful discussions and contributions. The first point is, of course, the impact of digital technology. We should be aware of the impact of digital technologies. We know that most of the data, or most of the artificial data, of course, have been produced in the last 2 years, and we know that the number of connected devices is exponentially growing, and as a consequence, of course, artificial intelligence and machine learning will significantly affect industrial and marketing processes and managerial practices. So this is for SME a possible advantage. SME can rent algorithms from the cloud, for example, and machines can learn from data. But as a result, of course, part of the intellectual work will be replaced by machines. So this is a first problem. And the first challenge to understand the impact of digital technologies is to understand the new paradigm of man-machine collaboration and to promote policies and regulations to make this new form of interaction beneficial for people and for their society. The second point that is being addressed, just to summarize, of course, that discussion, is the need of policies to promote knowledge transfer capabilities of universities and research organizations, and also knowledge transfer between larger and small companies, and vice versa, because innovation comes from larger to small and from small to large company. So, of course, university should train talented people, and it is well known that in all the most competitive areas of the world, there are outstanding universities able to attract talented students, talented researchers, talented entrepreneurs. But now, these emerging technologies, from additive manufacturing to robotics, from artificial intelligence to blockchain technologies, from neurotechnologies to neuroscience to synthetic biology, they're required to develop a kind of multidisciplinary and transversal approach. And so, as a consequence, a new paradigm for research organization and also for research is needed, will be required in the future. And the challenge for developing policies in this field is to create some kind of multidisciplinary international center. We have in Italy, in Germany, a model which is called competence centers, promoting and fostering not just technology transfer, but a kind of, I would say, knowledge sharing among universities, research institutions, small companies, and large companies. And this is the second point. The third point, finally, are the policies in order to reduce gaps and increase sustainability of emerging technology from a cultural, economic, and a social point of view. And so one point that also emerged in the other panel is an emphasis on the transformation of work and the fact that the creation of new skills is needed. And the competence centers, can create a proper ecosystem in order to design new education processes in order to manage the loss of jobs by creating new opportunities. This is really a duty that we have. And secondly, regarding SMEs, SMEs should have a free access to knowledge associated with new technologies and to data needed for creating and sustaining business in order to avoid divergence in the development of sectors and of country. So the overall challenge for this third point is to make public data openly available for services and also to retrain educational models. Somebody says to disrupt educational model by promoting huge investment in digital and IT technical and executive competencies. And finally, this is the last statement, important changes in regulations are needed, and by using just a multi-stakeholder approach like in this conference. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you very much, Professor. And now Luca De Biase on datification. Luca.
Thank you, Marco. Our panel was right after lunch, so it was sort of less attended from the public, the audience, but it was the most controversial and the one that gives to our ministers many different points of view, more than one specific point of view, because this was really a multi-stakeholder panel. We were talking about datification. We can get too much datification in terms of what Marco Zatterin was referring before. We have a word that is filled with data. Data is going to become a sort of the beginning of a new enlightenment, has said Professor Victor Meyer-Schönberger, who was the keynote speaker for our panel. He is the best-selling author of Big Data, the book. So he said that we need to understand what big data is about in terms of culture, economics, social. And he said we are just grasping the beginning of what it's going to be the big data revolution in our culture. But the real question is, are we organizing big data the right way? Isn't it the case that too few companies have too much access to too many data? Is it the case that somebody improves the way we conceive the organization of access to data? That was the question. Professor that leaves us with a question is always a very good contribution. But then started the answers. The answering came from Microsoft, who said that having the most free flow of data is the most important thing for improving efficiency and creating new opportunities for economics, for businesses. And he gave us some examples. He called for an international agreement to organize the way we organize access to data. But the problem is exactly on what kind of basis the equilibrium, the new equilibrium should be found. It's clear that also the contribution from Rob Sherman of Facebook was in this line, we need free flow of information, he was also telling us that his company needs more equilibrium between the efficiency of the flow of data and the perception of privacy that individuals have using their platform. Because if the individual believes to have lost control of his own data, then he will use less eagerly the platform. So there is a sort of link between the interest of the social side, the user, and the platform. But it's clear that it was Sally Shipman Wentworth that came for the Internet Society to tell us more about the importance of the interest of the user in the general relationship between business and companies. In the meantime, my notes on the phone are covered by a phone coming in, so I don't see what's written in there, but I go ahead using my memory. And then there was this idea of going back to manufacture. Manufacture and data are, of course, linked. Industry 4.0, we say, in Europe, but also in Japan, the Internet of Things innovation is called very important, and it gives us the lead to think about cybersecurity in a new dimension because of self-driving cars and all things that happen in houses and everything. So at the end of the day, we are seeing a world in which data is improving our ability to understand, to do business, and to link people in the society. But at the same time, it makes us problematic in terms of privacy, copyright, security. So the multi-stakeholder panel asked for all this together. If we are so much intelligent in this age, we should prove it by giving us, the planet, both the lot of benefits from data, which is efficiency, privacy, copyright, free speech, and security. If we are not able to put together all these different goals, then we are not intelligent enough.
So thank you, Luca. I wish we made a little bell we use at La Stampa to make our colleagues to stick to the timetables. I wish you could stick to your 5 minutes, to the 5 minutes you were given. So next attempt is by Professor Baldoni, who I remind you was in the panel who discussed how to secure the cyberspace for business.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I was amazed by, if I remember, the nice old times when there were plants that were completely physically separated with the rest of the world, and then we started to integrate the piece together inside the plant, and now there is this movement to, let's say, move data and processes outside the physical borders, and of course this is a big call for security. So we actually are creating a world, as Luca said, where the issue of cybersecurity is absolutely rising. And of course, if you look at blockchain technology, as I said, cloud, I also heard about the artificial intelligence and machine learning panel that was done just before, the number of issues that you have in cybersecurity is absolutely rising. And this is why, it's not me, but Jean-Claude Juncker said a couple of days ago that cybersecurity is the second emergency in Europe after climate change and before immigration. And why say that? Because, we just experienced a couple of campaigns during the month of May and June of malware that came through Europe, and you have seen what's happened. And of course, they were very light malware campaign in the sense that they were just obeying to some not recent version of an operating system. So in some sense, the danger that we have had is very large, and we have to cope with that. So who is concerned by cybersecurity? This is one of the points that has been touched by the panelists that I all thank for their contribution. Everyone that has a smart object connected to the internet is related as business in cybersecurity. So government, industry, citizen, research. And the future, as I said before, is predicting more complexity. The digital transformation process, in some sense, is necessary for the competitiveness of our industrial system, but this will greatly increase the attack surface of a company. So a country that will not put at the center of its digital transformation the cybersecurity will be a country that will seriously jeopardize its economic prosperity. So at the center, what does it mean? It means at the center of policies, regulation, devices, enterprises, research. Why? Because cyber means business. So this is one of the central messages that I would like to pass through. So, and from the other end, there is no magic touch to cope with these cyber attacks. No solution fits all. Only hard work can help. There is nothing else that we can do at the moment. So, of course, the main step we have to take is to reduce the advantage of the attacker. There is an advantage in anonymity, in unpredictability of the time of the attack, but there is also an advantage in collaboration. So the attacker, the cyber criminal, they collaborate to make stronger attack. So from this perspective, we have to reduce this asymmetry and try to start seriously collaborating among us. So information sharing is one of the key points for joint threat intelligence, joint responses, and each speaker of the panel pointed out this very clearly. So we have to build trust among the organization, and trust is something that you cannot buy in the marketplace. So we have to build it on the field, understanding the advantages and understanding the threat. And of course, promoting public-private information sharing, private-private information sharing, shared information sharing, all the things that we know since many years. But building also an efficient cybersecurity risk management inside the company. So percolating inside the executive board of a company the fact that the cyber risk is a primary risk. So they have to take into account when they define the policy inside the organization. And, some of us that were in the panel worked on the cybersecurity framework that we are trying also in Italy to push forward, which is actually what? It's a collection of best practices, a collection and also relationship with standard that can help industry in order to, let's say, raise the level of security. Certification is definitely something that is at the center of cybersecurity, certification of devices, certification of companies, I would say, in order to make the supply chain safer, and competencies as well. Let me say that we have also to put our attention in creating a workforce for each of our countries. And this is top priority for anyone. Technicians, engineers, cyber talents. I mean, at the end of the day, cybersecurity needs talents. And the latter represent the golden nugget that we must find and make value out of it. And the role of research, as last bullet, is fundamental in this domain. Usually when I talk with physicians, I say, okay, you have your rules of physics, maybe you don't know this rule, you have to do some discover, but the rules of physics are, let's say, does not change a long time, okay? They are there, so you have to understand, you have to make experiments, and at the end of your day, you got it. So from our perspective, we have cyber criminal in front of us. So people that can behave in very unpredictable way, considering also technology that is changing. So this is why I think research, together with the private sector, together with the public sector, are really the three big fundamental pillars on which building a new way of doing cyber security. And I think that, every country, at the end of the day, has to find its own path on facing this issue due to its social, technological, and geopolitical complexity that they have. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of need of cooperation, and we have to put out all possible, collaboration means in order to raise the level of our economy, because otherwise it will impact our prosperity in the future. That's it.
Thank you, Professor Baldoni. I would suggest the next G7 presidency to have a debate of the meaning of 5 minutes among high-tech experts, but that's up to the Canadians, I guess. Professor Boella, he will tell us about artificial intelligence in the digital economy.
I organized the session 4 as I am full professor of AI at the University of Torino. And with the 30 billions of investment in the last year, according to the McKinsey report, on AI, it seems clear that finally AI is out of its past winters. And it got out of research labs and universities to have finally an impact on industry and society. Even if these $30 billion are unevenly distributed geographically, with a great majority of investment in USA and in China, and also differently across industries, with early adopters are mostly the big digital champions. But still, despite this success, there is always the risk that winter is coming, but this time it will not be due to technical reason, but to the risk due to social acceptability. The problem is that innovation has speed up very fast with respect to the past. We pass from generations to adopt a technology to a few years to adopt a technology. And still, innovation must be metabolized by citizens, industries, policymakers, and so on. So, first of all, there is a need to train citizens to adapt to innovation. There is a need to reskill workers, and this emphasis on education requires also attention by the public sector to have investment. But the challenge on acceptability is not only in the problem of the risk of losing jobs. Certainly some jobs will be lost, even if it has been shown by the discussant that the more creative jobs and the non-routine ones are still increasing with respect to routine ones. But in particular, we have to take in mind that the job loss problem is a local problem, but the benefits from AI will be at the global level with a great impact on the environment, on the agri-food production, and so on. The risk in the short term, rather than just the loss of work, is the challenge of humans and robots working side by side. Fortunately, we are different from robots. We are self-directed by goals. We use common sense reasoning. We are based on values. And current technology is still very far from this kind of behavior and qualities. And also, if it gets closer, we have the problem of not having universal values, and so to have technologies that adapt to different culture. So in the short term, it's probably better to use the term augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence as support humans in their task. But next, when artificial intelligence will be applied alone, for example, to mission-critical systems, further questions arise. If it is not a problem to have error when intelligent algorithms sell advertisements or recommend movies to user, it is a different story when they are driving an aircraft. Nowadays, autopilots are very, very simple piece of software with respect to other kind of software, because they must be understandable by pilots who has to foresee what the plane, even if they are not driving them, in the moment the plane it is doing. So it arises the question of explanation, having software which is able to give explanation, to give proofs of what it's doing, and in general of certifying software, as it happens with current software in many sectors. Why there is this difficulty in giving explanation? Because the recent great, fantastic successes in the AI field are due to machine learning and deep learning techniques, where statistical reasoning is applied to past data to extract pattern, make forecasts. But this is not the only kind of AI. The AIs cover other sectors like knowledge representation, reasoning, planning, decision making. And machine learning is facing, despite, I repeat, the successes, challenges due to the fact that it discovers correlations, while not causality, and also it's not providing explanation. Nowadays, research focus on accuracy, on having algorithm learning and having performances which are better than humans, while the research challenge should focus also in the future on algorithms that provide explanation and are not just black boxes. Another distinction that I would like to introduce is the one between embodied artificial intelligence and non-embodied artificial intelligence. In the first case, we have robots, physical machines governed by intelligent algorithm. In the second case, we have cognitive systems providing services, for example. But still, in both cases, their skills are toward routine work. We are, as humans, we are embodied intelligence. Our intelligence is deeply rooted in how we are made as biochemical system. For example, the neurons we use to understand language are strictly correlated to the neurons that produce language moving our tongues. And this kind of system is very, very different and far from current technologies. So the risk of an artificial intelligence taking over the world is still far away. And as Professor Cingolani mentioned, computers don't have hormones. But the risk is also controlled by the fact that there are several multi-stakeholder initiatives, both private and public, like the Partnership on AI, where government, citizens, industries gather together to discuss risk and to direct AI toward the global good.
Now, Diego Piacentini is the man in charge of directing the traffic of the Italian digital motorway. So, how does it look? At least you less than 5 minutes, please.
Okay, so I will need to show human adaptivity because we're told 10, and I'll try to do as fast as I can. So I'm representing the Innovation 7, which is what I called an experiment. Each country appointed focal points, which are represented in this picture. I don't expect you to read the names, then you understand why I'm actually putting the pictures out there. People are coming from politics, but most of them from the science department, the technology departments of their own governments. We appointed, and we have to thank them all, and again, just look at the pictures, 38 experts from all the countries. Those experts come from the science field, from venture capital, from large corporations, small corporations. They have only one thing in common. They're not politicians and they never worked in the government. So that's the only thing they have in common among them. We were asked to assess 3 themes, and the 3 themes I'm going to read really quickly, and I think exhausting my first minute. Artificial intelligence, how can AI help governments make better decisions and deliver policies and services more effectively? That's the number 1. Number 2, big data, from regulations to active management. How can a more proactive approach to big data lead to smarter countries? And number 3, the changing nature of society, the future of work. How could innovation help deal with upcoming social and demographic changes? The point is, we want to focus on the positive of technology. Obviously, understand that there are some negative, but the narrative is way too often negative and about regulations of new technology, and we wanted to give the right positive spin. Obviously, if I'm going to read the entire chair summary, I'm going to completely blow my 5 minutes. I will read just a couple of points because I want to get to the meat of the conversation. We ended up subdividing in 4 themes that we recommend governments to take into considerations or to take stock of or consider. It's not my definition of the language. The key points are about training and education, and I'm going to pick just a couple. This is very, very important. High impact awareness training and education programs about exponential trends in technology and other fields to the whole society, including and starting from politicians, policymakers and business leaders, faith leaders, opinion leaders, teachers and professors, journalists, and the media. The need of acquiring fundamentals and new skills and competencies such as creativity and the capacity of solving tough, complex problems, logical reasoning, or coding. So it's not about just teaching to the young generation, although it is also teaching to the young generations. It's technology key points. I would say one of the most important one is recognizing that APIs are the nervous system of the 21st century. Silos that prevent data integration are greatly reducing the power of high variety data to deliver deep insights. To overcome these, we encourage collaboration on common open APIs in sectors of importance and promote access to the exchange of data. There are others, but again, since this will be published, it's going to be obviously public. G7 countries encourage research in key scientific, technological, and societal fields to provide an environment conducive to the emergence of innovation and development of a digital economy. Advancement in security technologies is a key priority. And by the way, we need to use AI to improve security. The third theme is ethics and society. I would say the transformational nature of big data will require continuous adaptation of all key actors involved, governmental bodies, businesses, and citizens, in their multiple roles of data generators, data analysts, and end users, and a different conversation on the concept of digital privacy, data ownership, digital security, and accountabilities in the sharing of user data. I would go also directly to jobs and income related key points. So the 4 themes that we just discussed, I would say that among the most important is that the new technology platforms do exist. They must be recognized. They have created new working environments and the so-called gig economy. So governments need to consider how to recognize and encourage this new platform and consider the terms under which the new workforce operates. It does exist, and there is a new form of labor, and it needs to be encouraged, supported. It is important, and this is very key, I think it was an incredible good result of the conversation, to monitor and measure what kind of jobs are created, changed, and lost. This will help business and policymakers to constantly update the attributes needed for modern workplaces. In the era of increasing automation, we need to better find ways of measuring gig economy, of measuring the effect of non-paid labor, volunteering, and to improve social inclusion and civic engagement. I would be done with the 5 minutes, but I'm going to ask for an exception to take another minute, which is, since we're in an artificial intelligence world, when we spoke about this I7 and talking to some innovators, we had this idea of why don't we ask artificial intelligence to answer the questions? So I'm going to keep it very short, although the technical details are very interesting, is we trained I'm using, not me obviously, but people that know much more than me, data scientists, and a cluster of supercomputers. We pretty much trained the deep neural network to answer the questions. I don't know if you all know how it works, but pretty much we're training we're training a system to generate sentences. Pretty much we fed the entire Wikipedia on those terms to the computers, and in order to improve the language and the English language, the top, I think, 20 to 50 books on artificial intelligence, effects of labor, and big data. And then I'm overly simplifying, and I ask deep apologies to the scientists that I did this and my simplification of it, but it's very interesting to see the results. So we started with an incipit, and the incipit is pretty much the question, and here what machines generated. And by the way, it will find amazing that some of the words that have been used by the people before me are actually reproduced in the document. First, AI-generated statement. Oh, by the way, this was the methodology. I apologize. Think about it. It's about parameters about a 1 month of training, human post-editing to fix grammar and punctuations. Statements in bold report the incipit of the sampling. Curious, right? I am too. I've already seen it though. AI contribution. So the human is, in the future, artificial intelligence will replace human work. That's the first sentence. Then the computers, and may represent a potential long-term future in AIs. If worker roles can be perfectly changed without any more human intervention, we'll be in the winter of madness. I heard the word winter, by the way. But nature does appear to require a digital life-saving regime for a biological human being, and this may allow to prospect of human workers to continue exist indefinitely. That's what the machine says. The second question is, artificial intelligence can help governments deliver policies and services more effectively. Remember that was it? So then human capabilities and abilities that also encompass deterrence and analysis. The worst scenario is probably excessive or inappropriate programming, which is why the governments have to work to create a perfect deterrent. Now, I mean, this is machine-generated statement. I just insist on that part. Don't take it as the results of this meeting, please. Future workers will use artificial intelligence, and that's the other incipit, to power existing technologies or to eliminate redundant predefined factors such as genetic bias and simple algorithms. What we will call general artificial intelligence, we might propose a superintelligence whose well-organized function is not conceivable. As well as you might point out that a suitably engineered intelligence might look human, even if it's not very intelligent. those hypothetical smart intelligence beings that will be selected, or at least worthy, will already supersede human intelligence. I keep insisting that's the machine generated. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner. What if the machine is lying?
Machines are unbiased.
I don't know. So these were the subjects, these were the ideas which have been driving the debate today with the experts. Now I will give the floor